What's up, everybody? Back with another episode of the Dragzine Podcast. And this week, we got another Top Fuel driver on the show, Josh Hart. Josh, what is going on?
Happy to be here, man.
Appreciate you coming on. It was funny. I watched you win the race. That was awesome. And about 2 seconds after you crossed the finish line and the win light came on, my editor hit me up and was like, we have to get him on the show. I was like, he is going to be inundated with everybody and their brother trying to get him on. Let's let him kind of go through that before he comes on here so we can let him kind of soak in what you did and what what you have fun doing there at Gainesville.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable outreach of communication. That's for sure. Nothing could explain. My phone was basically useless for 2 days.
Yeah, that's. I'll get that when I'm at a race and people see me on a live feed. They're like, "Oh, I see you. Oh, I see." I'll get those at least once. I couldn't imagine winning a national event, let alone winning your first national event, that your phone basically would probably just turn into like just a buzzing toy.
It truly was. It was 5,000 plus Facebook and social media requests. I looked down at my phone at midnight Sunday night after we won the race, and there was 1,100 plus text messages.
Wow.
I was like, man, I didn't even think people had my phone number like that. So
you're going through, I know 1,100 people.
Yep.
Well, I started digging into a little bit about you before we did the show, and I saw in an interview where you talked about where your career literally started in drag racing as a test and two night at Gainesville in a Ford Lightning. Did you ever think in your wildest dreams after making a trip down the track that you would go from a Ford Lightning to a Top Fuel Dragster?
Never, ever. When we started in that truck, I had gotten in a lot of trouble with speeding tickets and stuff like that. And somebody said, hey, you're a really good driver. Why don't you try it on the drag strip? So we just cruised up there and, man, I had a ball. And I drove the speed limit all the way home.
It's funny. You see a lot of people that it starts out like I write a lot of features on guys, and there's usually on some of the older guys, the old school guys, they basically say, I was getting in a lot of trouble street racing and I needed a better outlet for it. And it's good that you turned over to that. And that had to be just kind of wild, when a lot of people get exposed to formal drag racing for the first time. It's kind of it's an interesting concept, isn't it?
Oh, it's out of this world.
And, what was it like? Can you remember back what it was like kind of going to the track those first couple of times? And like, when did you realize that the bug had bit you pretty hard?
Well, we took the Ford Lightning, which is like the heaviest brick you can possibly think of to force through the air. And I think I broke every single thing known to man on that truck. I still have it. It was my very first truck. And I realized that I got bit when I told my wife, I said, hey, I need to swing by the bank. I'm going to buy this Super Comp Dragster. And she goes, well, we'll just swing by the ATM. I said, I don't think the ATM is going to cover this one.
That right there, that's awesome. That kind of shows when someone doesn't fully understand what journey they're about to go to. Let's go to the ATM. I don't think ATMs in the United States spit out that much cash, sweetie. And that's also awesome at the same time that you went through that experience of what a lot of us have gone through, the eventual carnage and destruction of, I want to go faster. And you find out real quick, horsepower likes to find the weakest link to brake.
Yeah, absolutely. In my Super Comp car, it was the first time that I experienced tire shake. And I remember breaking the planetary gears, and I just looked at it and I thought, how in the world is that possible? But the dollar signs started adding up really quick.
Yeah, especially in a Super Comp grade transmission. And yeah, that's another one of those things where people don't understand what it's like unless they've broken parts. When you break something you're not supposed to break, like, you're not really mad at first. You're just going, how did I actually do that? What was it like? Did you go straight from the Lightning to a Super Comp Dragster? Was there anything in between at all?
Yeah, we built a 2003 Cobra Mustang that we got into the nines. And that was my first actual win. We won a bracket race. It's called Dial for Dollars. And I think my light was like a .005 or something like that. And I remember everybody talking in the pits about how much they didn't like me because it was my very first race also. But then we went to Super Gas, Super Comp, Top Dragster, Alcohol, and then Top Fuel.
Yeah, that kind of leads into the next question. You did the steps, because I've seen racers start all the way down at like junior dragsters to find their way up, and then you get people that like literally like a funny car was their first official race car. You know, what was it like kind of going through that progression of speed for you, you know, starting out in a truck and going up to, you know, like fast bracket cars?
Um, I would say my truck was fun. The Cobra was fun. Super Comp, Super Gas, Top Dragster. That was cool because I could work with my guys here at Bernie's. So like we'd go to the track, we'd weekend warrior it, and then catch out back on the way home, type of thing. So that was cool, and getting acclimated to the speed was something that I just wanted to do. But it ultimately just wasn't enough, you know.
That's another one of those reoccurring themes we all seem to run into, is that you always like there's some guys, like I had Jeff Verdi on last week, a bracket racer, and he said, you know what, I don't have any desire to go faster. Like if I could maybe, but you know, I'm good just bracket racing, doing that whole deal. And then you get the guys that are like, that was fun, what can I do to go faster? And it just it's a hard feeling to describe, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. You can't really describe it. That's probably the most commonly asked question that I've heard so far is what does it feel like in a top fuel dragster? And I've come up with kind of a way to describe it. And best I can say is it's like wrestling a 25-foot python and hoping that it goes your way for 3.7 seconds.
That's actually that's a unique description. I've heard a lot of them talked about on the show, but that totally makes sense. I am going to use that going forward, because that's, yeah, the other thing people talk about is it's like the more you do fast dragster racing or fast car racing period, that things slow down. But in a top fuel car, it's like you almost have to predict where it might or might not go, don't you?
Yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, in the alcohol car, about 600 feet, it kind of plateaued, you know, and you could see the scoreboard, and you can see the fans, and you can feel the other person coming. And the top fuel car, it'll pull and pull and pull until it destroys itself.
Yeah, it's just like it's like releasing a toddler on sugar. It just goes until it runs out of fuel and just crashes.
Yep. Yep. It's like my 1-year-old. She's a little lipo battery. She's golden, and then you'll find her falling asleep all of a sudden.
Yeah. My niece is the same way. As like when she's on, it's like constant going, just it's there, it's wide open, and then they're not. And that's a lot like a top fuel car. It's either going, or even, you know, a dragster, like a top alcohol dragster, it's either going wide open or it's not.
Yep.
Now, I love the alcohol classes, just because it's like you said, the weekend warrior kind of deal. You see a lot of families and groups of friends that get together to kind of get into that whole deal. How much did doing that help you kind of prepare you for top fuel racing?
I would say it very well prepared me. You know, I was in alcohol for 5 years, and those guys deserve an award. You know, it shouldn't be sportsman racing. You know, it should be, you know, it's still pro, in my opinion. It's the second fastest class, and they don't get enough credit. I loved alcohol racing, um, and they deserve an award just to get to the track. I mean, the financial burden that it puts on these smaller teams and stuff, it's pretty uncomprehendable. But in my preparation, I was really, really blessed in the alcohol car. I felt very safe in the car, and there was only one other spot to move up to.
You know, you sum that up perfectly, that these teams, that they should really get something. I love watching those cars and the funny cars because of how close the racing is and how fast that they're still doing quarter mile deal. And, you know, the injected alcohol cars, I did a story with the Haradas about, you know, what it takes to run one of those cars. And I learned a lot. I didn't realize how close those cars, an injected car, was to a full blown nitro car.
Yeah, they're very evenly paired, and it's just a great group. It's an awesome like family help each other out type environment. Not as cutthroat as other classes. And, everybody's friends until you're on the line. But I mean, I've seen people and I've been a part of actually loaning competitors' engines, whatever it took to get them back up to the line.
What was it? Was it the finals this year of the guy that was racing Mega Meyer? They gave him an entire, like he went to his competitor, they gave him a whole engine to make it happen. I mean, that's like, handing someone a briefcase full of money. I mean, that shows trust in, like, just like you said, that camaraderie. It's like alcohol racers are almost like they're like a tribe, a horsepower tribe.
Yeah. I mean, we all kind of stuck together and everything was great until you were on the line.
Yeah, everybody has friends till 3 bulbs are lit. That's how it works. And another cool thing is, I was reading up on you that you won the U.S. Nationals twice in alcohol dragster, and that's winning Indy once in any class is awesome. Winning it twice is, that's something people can hang their whole career on. What's it like to be a multi-time winner at Indy?
The first time, and that was my first national win ever.
Oh, wow.
It was unbelievable. I mean, we busted our butts. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had just grenaded a brand new engine, had one run on it. So we didn't even know we were going to get in the show, but to do it twice was awesome. I mean, we made history. I think we were the only person that had done that in the alcohol ranks at that time. And I mean, I was just super, super blessed. It was a great experience. And actually we won 4 times in a row. We won 2 regionals back to back and 2 nationals back to back. So that's a whole lot of rounds that we never got beat at Indianapolis. And then we actually runnered up the year after that.
Wow. That's like, that's one of those things that Brian Loans would announce, that he would go, wow, like that's something you don't hear a lot, especially because, well, I was at the NMCA finals last year talking with racers, and, to them, the NMC finals at Indy, that's the biggest of the big deal because they don't get to race at Indy. And one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that, Indy, it's something special. When you roll through the gates there, it's like everybody elevates their game to the next notch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So going in there and winning that many rounds against, I mean, at Indy, that brings all the West Coast players. Everybody comes out there. So to win that many rounds at Indy, that's an achievement. Yeah,
my team was, super, super consistent. And that's another thing. I mean, you get a good group of guys, you got to hold on to them, because that's where the real magic happens. It's with the team. It's, the driver's got to cut a light and hold on for 3 to 5 seconds, but the guys is where the magic happens.
Oh, totally. The crew guys, I always just taking pictures and watching crew guys, because the level of focus that they have, and it's like watching like a horsepower ballet, just how everybody's so in sync with what they do. And it doesn't matter, like any car that requires a team, alcohol cars, top dragster cars, nitro cars, heads up cars. It's always interesting to watch how the teams work right after a run. It's so, you can tell who's serious about it because of how in sync they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a well orchestrated symphony. If you pay attention to even the Top Fuel teams, I mean, they're not messing around. They know where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there.
The only time I've seen fuel teams seem relatively relaxed is like at match race deals, like up at Norwalk at the Night Under Fire. Like they're still taking it seriously, but you could tell where they're like, there's a little bit less like, there's not national event pressure on their chest. And that's a real thing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the amount of effort that it takes to get to the racetrack is something that most fans and spectators could not fathom, so to get this operation, to get to the starting line and make a successful pass, let alone go rounds, you got to experience it.
Yeah. I always joke that there's 3 different kind of sections to a race weekend. There's the trip there, which God knows what could happen getting there. There's getting to the track, dealing with whatever happens there, and then there's getting home. And then there's so much more stuff that gets piled into that. You just don't throw any race car into a box and just show up at the track, especially like an alcohol car or a nitro car, because you have to have that car ready to go before you get there.
Yeah, and that's where I go back to saying what I said about the A fuel and top alcohol cars. It's like it costs just as much money for them to show up and participate. It's a awesome accomplishment to show up to the racetrack with your operation.
And it's not like the other thing you notice too is you can't take an alcohol car to a test and tune session to get that thing dialed in, unless you're at like a top level track, because they're not going to have anywhere close to national event level prep to get one of those cars safely down the track.
Correct. And I mean, we tried that a couple times. We tried showing up to a test and tune in Gainesville, and I'm sure it was fun for the fans, but we just hazed the tires and put it back in the box. I mean, you just couldn't get enough traction.
Oh, I've been at a local track when an alcohol funny car showed up, and I was like, we got to stop what we're doing because I want to see what's going to happen. Because if they get this thing down the track, this dude is going to be wheeling this car like his life depends on it, because there's not going to be enough prep to make this thing stick. And kudos to them. They were smart. I mean, they only made maybe 150, 200 foot runs, but man, that was an eventful couple hundred feet for that driver. Because it's a whole, especially with the screw blowing cars, because it's like you're trying to calm them down as much as possible to get them to want to do anything other than the annihilate the tires or try to kill you.
Yep, absolutely correct.
Now, before we move on to the next section, I got to thank our sponsor of this episode, Airflow Research. AFR, the original CNC ported cylinder head. From the street enthusiast to the hardcore racer, AFR has designed a cylinder head for your application with one goal in mind, just to go fast. Now, going off of our sponsor there, AFR makes a lot of awesome products. They make great street vehicle products. They make great Ford heads and stuff like that, like you might have put on your Lightning. But it brings us to another thing with nitro and alcohol cars is it's not exactly parts you can go pick up at the local AutoZone to make a hit, is there?
No, not at all.
You got to do a lot of research on that. Is that something that kind of, I guess, as you moved up the rank, shocked you, is how much parts inventory and stuff you'd have to buy, specialty stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean, to put it in perspective, we ordered our clutch discs for the season, and it was like $65,000. And you just try to put that in perspective, and it's like, wow. And that may not even get you all the way through the season.
A consumable product that costs $65,000. Meanwhile, other people complain about, a package of golf balls.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, your hobby's expensive. Let me tell you about mine.
No, you want to say thank you to, Brad Anderson and Bonifant, all those guys. But I mean, now we're in the big leagues. We're playing with, John Force and a lot of DSR stuff. And this stuff is just beautiful. I mean, it is like jewelry when it comes out of the box. And to think that you're literally going to blow it to pieces or use it a couple times and throw it away, most people can't fathom that.
Oh no, like when I explain to people the drag racing, just motorsports in general, but specifically drag racing, you could see them doing the math in their head, questioning your sanity for what you want to do, let alone how much it's costing. And you're like, well, I mean, for that, however long you're in the car, it's a really fun ride. And then, I hate my time, and I hate spare time, and I hate money. So works out great.
That's pretty fair.
Like you said, the jewelry isn't like, that's another cool thing, like going to a show like PRI or something like that. I always encourage people to go to some of these trade shows or stop by a vendor's booth just to look at some of the cool, like you go to the BME booth and look at those, the pistons and all that stuff. And just, like you said, it's man jewelry. It's amazing.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. I sent out during COVID probably 150 connecting rods that we had used over the last year, and I just gave them to the fans because I mean they're so pretty.
Yeah,
and I couldn't find another use for them. So
I've seen connecting rods used to make furniture. I've seen them used to make hero card holders. I've seen them used to make a grill. like the framework for a grill. And
That's all.
I'm like, that's awesome, but that is literally the most expensive grill in the history of man.
I agree.
And the other cool thing was, I always like it. I know Daryl Gwynn sells like used parts, and a few of the teams up at the Night Under Fire, they literally had tables set out of like blown up parts. And I'm going through and looking at this, and my wife's like, kind of looking at me, look at this. She goes, "Why are you looking at it so closely?" I'm like, one, I'm trying to figure out how they did this, and two, I'm looking at the price on this, what they're selling it for, used and blown up, versus what they paid for it. I'm like, that hurts my soul.
Yeah, it's one of those things too. Like it could look perfectly fine, but that $175 connecting rod, if it happens to stretch on the 29th run, could cost you $80,000. So there's a lot of preventative maintenance as well.
Oh yeah, the wear items on fuel cars, actually just any fast car, is just it's mind numbing. I'm talking to pro mod guys that are like, yeah, I have 25 runs on a set of rods, and then I pull them. They still might be good, but you never know that. Like they tell us 25. I don't want to go to 26 because you don't know what could happen on 25 and a half.
It's a very expensive lesson.
Yeah. That's a very good way to put it. It's an expensive lesson. And it's not good when you make a miscalculation. You know, it sucks when you got to put a little hashtag on a slick, but then when you got to do the hashtags, you know, when you're marking down runs on everything else, it starts to hurt.
Mhm.
What's the one part that you have to buy in bulk besides clutch discs that you just when you see that invoice, it's like, oh, this hurts.
Um, in the alcohol class, it was tires.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We had a bad rash of chunked tires, and we would try seasoning them. We'd buy a bunch of them, let them sit for a year like firewood, hoping that the compound would harden up just a little bit. We tried everything to make them last longer, but one race and you've got chunks of rubber just pulling out of those things.
Oh man, that's one of those deals where it's the local track probably loved you guys for dropping those off to put on the static drag if you were doing that.
Yes, that's probably where I'm at. And as far as the Top Fuel stuff goes, my crew chief is he's awesome. I mean, we didn't hurt anything throughout Gainesville. I mean, a couple small, couple pistons, I believe, and maybe a rocker, but no worries yet. I'm sure I'll find out.
Yeah, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when in a fuel car. When you get to add that badge of I blowed something up real good, on there. And then you got to hope that you keep it under a certain amount, because when I see someone, I think it was one of the Force girls, grenade an engine and rip the supercharger in half. I'm like, oh, there's about $30,000+ that just flew off into space.
Yeah, when I was actually licensing with Vandergriff, I he says that I came off the gas just enough, and then I pressed the gas again. And I'll never forget when we popped the blower on one of my test runs. When I got out of that thing, I was like, man, I'm so glad I don't own this thing. But now I do.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second, because I love talking to nitro racers about their first experiences in a nitro car, because they are all wildly different, and it's one of those things you do not forget it.
No.
Did they have you sit in the car the first time ever when they did the fire up to get you used to it?
Yeah, so like the warm-up procedure in the alcohol car versus Top Fuel was totally different. So I botched that up so bad. I mean, I felt like, yeah. And when you're on the jack stands, it felt the same, a little louder. You could hear the blower behind your head. And I was like, I got this, no big deal. When it's on the ground, totally different.
Do you think I may have made a miscalculation of my confidence?
Yep, I'm sitting at the tree, and I'm going, well, you idiot, you got yourself into this. You can't chicken out now. You got to hit the gas.
Yeah, it's like a roller coaster. You're at the top. It's like, well, I'm already here.
Yep, yep. And then, I hit the gas. My reaction time was probably like a 5. I sat there forever, way too long, and my neck felt like a hyperextended slinky.
Oh,
It just kind of twisted, like, and it was almost like slow motion. You could see the whole car just twist. And by the time it had come back down, you've already went 300 feet. So you better shut it off. I mean, it was just something I could have never planned for.
I imagine it being like one of those things you see like like a slow-mo like comedy action sequence where it's like everything's just kind of happening and you're trying to process it as it happens and like hoping that things are gonna go as they're supposed to go, right?
That's the best way I've ever heard it described.
It's funny again that like Scott Palmer had a story about that. It's like you don't realize what's happening till it's already happened. Your first few passes, and that's something you got to overcome quickly.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then, after the first pass, they're like, okay, now this time you're going to take it to 600 feet. And I'm like, wait a minute, I got to do it again.
Yeah, what?
But we made 3 passes that day, and the last pass, somebody came by me and they go, hey, make sure your chin strap is tight. And I thought, well, where were you at the first pass? you know but that's the secret to success. It's no joke. You keep your chin down because it pulls you so hard that your eyes will be level when it pushes you back.
Yeah, I was gonna say I figured there'd be someone there giving you some like tips about, hey, don't have your mouth open, make sure you're not fully clenched, wear a mouthpiece. That's maybe you need to start like a checklist for new beginners to like, here, you want your top fuel license, read this first before you do anything.
Actually, Mike Bucher called me, and we spoke before he took his license passes. He goes, do you have any tips? And I said, make sure your head's not touching the roll cage and make sure that your chin strap is tight and lower than you think it should be.
Yeah. How do you know? Trust me. Just trust me.
Yep.
Well, another cool thing that I've got to see that, fans might not get to see is like racers getting belted in. And it's borderline violent watching like some of you guys like rip on these straps, and like it makes my collarbones hurt to watch, but you kind of need to do that, don't you?
Yeah, it's definitely a process. I mean, my wife asked me if I was ever claustrophobic or anything like that. And I said, if that thought enters into your mind, you shouldn't even be close to one of these cars.
Oh,
Because once you're strapped in, I mean, you are literally a piece of the car.
that is absolutely no joke. My buddy keeps his super comp dragster, bracket dragster here. And eventually I'm going to try to get my, make some runs and get a license in that thing. And the first time I got into that car, mind you, he's a lot shorter than me. So my knees are automatically on the dash, like because of where the pedals are. I'm inside this car. I'm like, this is going to take some getting used to before we even start this thing up, because I want to be comfortable in here beforehand. And if you've never been in a dragster before, it's a different experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no room for anything.
No, you have to be very comfortable. And the lesson that he constantly talks about that he learned the hard way is always make sure the power's on before you belt yourself into a car.
Yep.
Like that, he goes, it sucks to get in the car. You go to start it, because he goes up fully dressed. And he's like, I go to start it, power's not on. Have to get out, go to start the power. So he literally put like a note on there that says power on to remind himself.
Smart guy.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that a lot of us drag racers is once we smash our hand about the 3rd time, we realize maybe I should make a reminder about this, because you're not always going to remember.
Yeah, most drag racers are masochists. They enjoy the pain.
Yeah, exactly. Or you figure out a way to circumvent certain amounts of the pain. I know it's one of those lessons I learned. I forgot to turn nitrous bottles on one time, or I forgot to arm my nitrous system. So I literally put on the dashboard of my Trans Am a sticky note and taped it to there. It says nitrous, stupid. So I always remember, like right there front and center, so I can't if people get my car and they'd ask, I'm like, just trust me. It's one of those things I did one time, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to deal with that again because you feel like an idiot.
Yeah, I actually put a picture of my wife right next to my parachute lever. And, if the situation gets a little too crazy, you got to look down at that picture every now and again, remind yourself, even in the heat of the moment, there's other things. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's something I think all drag racers kind of, and racers period, is that there's a mentality of when you are in that car, you are 10 foot tall, bulletproof, invincible, and you're ready to go as fast as possible. And that can be a problem sometimes because you can run out of talent or real estate in a hurry, or sometimes both. And that's not a good situation.
yeah, I even in first round, against Clay Milliken, if you played that footage back, the car stepped out probably about 600 feet or so. And, you start thinking, I got it, I got it, I got it. And then all of a sudden you're completely sideways and everything's happening so fast. You're like, well, I better just take my foot off the gas,
Yeah. I think I made a slight tactical error here.
Yeah. So it's always nice when she straightens back out and settles down, but that's whatever your threshold is.
Now you don't strike me as the kind of racer that will make a crew chief nervous due to their rambunctious nature. You seem to be the kind of racer that is going to make the calculated and right decisions and not try to overdrive stuff too often. Have you had any moments that stick out in your mind where it was like, wow, that was kind of sketchy?
Yeah, I had a moment in the alcohol car where I know I pushed it too hard. We were in the finals, a lot of pressure. It would have been our fourth win in a row in Atco, New Jersey. And we thought we had it locked down going up into the finals. And I had the car sideways. I mean, it instantly went into smoke. I pedaled it. It sat sideways the other way, and I stayed in it until the finish line. I was so mad. And some people had some pictures of the car on two wheels when it crossed the finish line, and it was not the two wheels front or rear. It was on its side.
Oh,
And I got a nice talking to by Dave Moan, and he said, you better never do that again. And it was just one of those situations. You're in it to win it, and that was my lesson: how to not drift a dragster.
yeah. Drifting in a dragster is not a sport for a reason because that length kind of physics tells you that when it whips one way, when it's going to whip back the other way, it's going to do it in a big and not happy manner.
Absolutely, yeah. I was reckless, and shame on me.
Now, it takes an entire team to win at one of these events, and how did your team help you at Gainesville win? Talk to us about your team and, how they put you in that position to get that blue hat.
I'll tell you what, they are magicians. When we were in qualifying or even testing the week of, I was not comfortable at all. I hadn't driven for a year, new operation, didn't even know all the crew guys' names. I was still meeting people in qualifying because we had a couple of guys that helped us out in testing, and then they switched up on me when we went into qualifying. So as the weekend progressed, you can tell my reaction times were terrible. I mean, just terrible. So finally I sat down with Ron Douglas and I said, I need you to make these adjustments. And he goes, okay, well, that's good. We're not used to people reporting that kind of stuff. And then my tree reaction times, I mean, everything just kind of came all together. It was like the stars aligned. So those guys are where it's at. I mean, I felt like I was more in the way. I mean, they're amazing.
That's interesting that, to hear you talk about that and the way you have to settle into something like that. And usually, in that situation, just meeting crew guys and a crew's first time out, it could be a little bit of a rough road, but it sounds like you guys kind of dialed it in and got done what you had to get done, in a hurry.
Yeah. I mean, no exaggeration. You're literally trusting these people with your life. If you make a mistake at 330 mile an hour, all bets are off. And as we got to know each other throughout the weekend, it really was magical. I mean, They didn't miss a beat. They gave me an excellent hot rod all weekend. It was super consistent, and I got very comfortable very fast.
And I think that that speaks volumes again from a driver's point of view, that your comfort level paid off. That you could, when you're in there, it's like when you see guys, I'm a big MMA fan, guys that aren't tight, the guys that are loose, those are the guys you will typically see go out and do well because they're not thinking about a million and one things. They're there to just think about their job and that's it and enjoy it.
Yep, you're exactly right. I mean, I've had the rug yanked out from underneath me before in business and in life. So I mean, I stay really super low key, try to be humble, kind to everybody. And Ron Douglas does the same thing. I mean, he's super down to earth. We have the same demeanor, and it's a great partnership.
Yeah, and that's another interesting thing is that it's rare to see a driver and crew chief that are polar opposites succeed, because you need someone that can, especially I think with the crew chief, that can mesh with the driver because it pulls them out of that comfort zone. So I'm sure it's got to be just as reassuring to have someone that's kind of on that same level as you, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if we have a problem, I mean, we squash it immediately. I mean, it's kind of a gentleman's agreement. We're both old school. So I couldn't be happier with my team.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you see the like two type A rowdy personalities try to be a crew chief and driver combination, because it can get a little interesting, testy, and objects can sometimes fly. If you listen to some of the old stories about some of these old school drivers and crew chiefs, they'd squash it by throwing stuff and screaming at each other.
Not my way.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely at that speed level. It's you can't have that kind of distractions, if you will. Now, your operation is a straight throwback to the early days of Top Fuel racing, which I love. You're a guy running a speed shop that races a Nitro Dragster. That's like what they used to do kind of back in the day. I guess, what is it that your guys' shop does exactly? How does it transition to, a Nitro deal?
So my wife and I started Bernie's with $300. We don't have wealthy parents or big time investors. We built it up to what it is today. We met some great people along the way that helped us get to the next level. And she started doing automotive detailing, and I started doing the superchargers. And that business has now turned into 100,000 square feet under roof, and we own an entire city block, and we'll do anything that you can dream of automotive. Superchargers, turbos, paint, but I mean, like full show car restoration, interior. You dream it, we'll build it.
To me as a customer, that's pretty reassuring. With if you're going to make an investment in a high-end build and you look over in the corner of the shop and, oh, there's a Top Fuel rig there. If you know anything, you're like, all right, these guys kind of know what they're doing. If they're playing with a Top Fuel car, it really, honestly, it transitions from like a shop like you described to that kind of racing, because you have to be detail oriented to succeed.
Yeah, I've actually experienced both sides of that. We had a nice transition period where there was a lot of turbulence, believe it or not. When the Top Fuel stuff and even alcohol stuff started really getting serious, we'd have customers come in and say, I'm not paying for your race fuel this weekend.
Oh, wow.
It kind of put things in perspective where I was almost afraid to put it in the public eye. I almost moved it off the property. But then you start realizing real quickly that that's not our client anyway.
No.
Now we're building $100,000 plus cars. We have a 16-month waiting list. And we're not messing around. I mean, we got people that come in here and build $300,000 cars. And for those people, we have a 2-year, 24,000-mile warranty, and we'll change the oil in their Honda Civic if they ask us to, but we just had to change and adapt. That's where we landed.
Now, kind of going off of that again, it's like it's cool to see like an independent team going out and racing at this level. And then what was it like, to be that independent racer, and then you basically ran through the top shelf teams at Gainesville and beat them all. Was that satisfying to you to like kind of be that, to carry the independent racer flag like that?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, you always look up to John Force and Don Schumacher, and you can't get away from what they've done for the sport, right? But to show up, brand new team, not multi-million dollar by any means, and whoop up on the big boys is pretty cool. But I'll tell you what was even more impressive was all of the drivers and all the persona, about being cutthroat and stuck up and multi-million dollar, blah, blah, blah. Very, very kind people. Everybody was kind. Mike Salinas greeted me in the pits, Don Schumacher, John Force, they all called me to congratulate me. And the big one was Steve Torrance. Like we talked for 4 or 5 minutes in the staging lanes. He was cool as hell. It's just understanding the mindset and the pressure that we're under when you're driving one of these things.
It's, I come from a background, at least wrenching on cars with one of my good friends on a small tire radial car. And it's the heads up racing world. And I think, maybe you can agree or disagree with this, that in heads up racing, it really is a brotherhood. It's like you're there to beat people, but at the same time, you don't want to be that person that kind of comes off as a dick, because then no one wants to help you if you need help. And it's just, it's not like that mentality, which is what I love about drag racers.
Yeah, it's definitely exactly the way you just described it. And yeah, I mean, it was cool. It's very cool to be the independent guy out there, but I think everybody wants what Steve Torrance has,
Oh, I love Steve Torrance for the simple fact that he does not have to answer to a corporate sponsor. He can say whatever he wants. He can get into a small shoving match with Cameron Ferreira. He's happy to be the bad guy. He don't care. He's there to race. That to me is like, it's almost like you could see that transition kind of happen when the corporate money really started to kind of change drag racing, because like big time, because racers had to like, I'm not going to say clean up their act, but they had to be more corporate friendly. And to me, that's not drag racing.
No, and you're exactly right. I mean, on the flip side of the Cameron for, that incident, you got to look at how much pressure Steve was under. Nobody thought about that.
Oh, totally. And it's one of those things where if you were in favor of what Steve did, oh, well, you just want people fighting. No, I want people to show emotion. Do I want to see Steve Torrance beat someone with a helmet at the top end? Absolutely not. But I'm good to see some people jawing each other and screaming and yelling. The thing is, that one just happened to get caught on camera. I guarantee you there's been multiple episodes of fist fights happening in the pits that you never hear about because there wasn't a camera around.
I agree 100%.
I've heard the stories, and I've heard some of the stuff that's gone now. There's a few years ago with the elite guys got into a scrap with another team, and there just happened to be a camera there. When John Force got into a shoving match with Petrogon, and Kurt Johnson had to separate them. It's people don't care until there's a camera there.
Yep, you're exactly right.
And the thing is, as racers, you'll have that heated moment. You'll say some heated stuff. 9.5 times out of 10, we calm down. Hey, man, I'm sorry. And then you go on. But now guess what? Steve Torrance, every time he comes up, has people that are 100% rooting for him or against him. And to me, that builds that rivalry up a little bit more. That it gets people interested.
And that's what NHRA needed.
And you look at Street Outlaws. I've been to a lot of no prep events where they are there racing with no cameras. And it reminds me a lot of the old days of NHRA where people were like, they're a Big Chief fan. They're wearing their Big Chief shirt and they're going to lose their minds when he makes a burnout. That's what we need in Nitro racing, is when Josh Hart makes a burnout and Josh Hart's fans are there screaming and yelling and telling other fans, this is my dude. That's what we need. We need more of that.
Love it.
Now, kind of going off of that, what's it like to run as a single car team in this modern super team era? What kind of challenges do you guys have faced? And, what are some of the advantages you see?
I would say as far as advantages go, we don't have to deal with all the corporate stuff. We've got some really great people behind us. I've been able to, obtain all of my sponsors throughout my career. So um, as far as that goes, I mean, I feel like we do enough business with them where it's a long-term arrangement. So I don't necessarily worry as much as maybe they do with their sponsors. Um, and then the people, the personal touch. You know, I want Ron Douglas around for a long time, and the team. I'm all about loyalty and creating the family environment, and I feel like you really lose that when you get too big.
Yeah, I could agree with that. Where you see a lot of turnover, and then at the same time, wasn't it Salinas that bought all of his guys Harley Davidsons after he won?
I heard that, yes.
I mean, it like I was in Indy and I saw like they bring them to the events and they're all lined up, and I'm like that right there, like that's one of those things where if you had the money to do it to help your crew out, like every driver in the world would 100% do that. That's like that's like the quarterback buying the offensive lineman dinner and whatnot. You're doing that because those guys are there to help you. And again, I think once again it's what those smaller teams kind of do in that level of tightness. It's not like a group of mercenaries per se. It's friends and family.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and I try to build a long-term relationship with all of our employees. I mean, most of the people that work for me under the Bernie Speed Shop flag, they've been here 10 years plus.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw that on your website.
Just a really, really good group of guys.
Yeah, and again, and I think it also kind of rolls back into two is that you've got to keep things fun. Even at Nitro Racing, there has to be a certain element of like fun that you have to keep it from grinding you down because going to multiple events, I mean, I'm sure you saw it in an alcohol cart. It's a grind.
Yeah, there was one year where I think we did 17 races and I was on the road for 21 weeks. Of course, I was before my daughter was born, but at the end of it, you're just done. I mean, it wears you out. It's monotonous. If you start feeling like the circus, I was ready to be home.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely, especially if you're driving the truck and trailer, you're riding to and from. I've done a few of the 12, 13-hour rides in a truck and trailer. And again, that's why I include that in the sections of an event because getting to the event, you're all excited, yay, we're going racing, and then 3 days of beating yourself into the ground. And if nothing bad happened, you're only going to be slightly tired. If you've had, catastrophic failure, some bad luck when you're getting ready to go to that truck and you lose in the first round to go home, it seems like a 25-hour ride home.
Yeah, that was probably the most frustrating part about the alcohol class. I mean, we always got pushed to the side, which is not right. And I mean, I was driving the truck and setting up the canopy and getting the car ready. I had another guy with me, but it's just you start really getting beat down. You're driving from, here to Vegas and it's 3 days just to get there type of situation. And then we didn't even qualify for a regional event. So you're going home just, ready to be done.
And yeah, setting up a pit for a heads up car is definitely, it's not lawn chairs and battery chargers.
No.
And if there's one thing I've learned that is not fun is setting up an awning on a stacker or a big rig. That right there is like it's one of those processes. It's like dental work. You got to get it done. You just bite it down. You're like, all right, I got to do this. I got to power through it.
You're exactly right. Yeah, it's rough.
And yeah, but again, you complain about it, you kind of grumble about it, but then guess what? The second someone goes, let's go racing, you're like, all right, yeah, the truck gassed up, let's go. Like, what's wrong with us? Why do we do this?
We enjoy the pain.
Yeah, the pay. It could be as bad as like I was watching some of the dirt track racing on Flow. Dirt track racing is not cheap, and it was like a limited late model, and they're racing for $500 to win in the A main. I'm like, that's upsetting. That's just oh in a dirt car. And God knows that's not cheap to race any of those.
No, it doesn't make sense, does it?
No, we're idiots, but it's fun. It beats I tell people it beats chasing women and chasing whiskey most of the time.
Yep, I agree with you. Been with my wife 18 years and I don't know anything else. So I'll just drive race cars.
Yeah, that's I try to explain that to my wife is that having a husband as a racer is the greatest built-in babysitter on earth because I'm literally at three places. I'm at home, I'm at work, I'm at the racetrack. That's it.
Very well described.
Like there is no place else that that you want to go. It's not that I hate people a lot, but I don't want to go to a bar. That costs money that I can't put in the race car. This makes no sense. This doesn't compute. Now, my editor proposes to me having kind of change this question up. What's your next big goal in rag racing? Do you want to be a full-time pro? Are you going to chase the sponsors to do something like that? Or are you just happy kind of, being the occasional guy like that shows up and just every touring pro is like, oh, this guy, great. This isn't a duck. This isn't fun.
The goal is definitely to run a full season. We're going to work towards that. And truthfully, this year was just so I could get comfortable in the car, see how the team gelled together, make sure that it was affordable for us. And I think we checked all the boxes. So we're going to add to our schedule this year and we'll be ready for hopefully a full season next year.
And, getting that first win is always a huge deal. But I think outside of having that on your resume, you have to learn to win. You have to learn a winning culture. And now you guys have that already built in. They're like, this is what it takes to win. Is that true?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They're not all going to be like that.
No.
I know that. So we're just going to go out there, man, and do what we do and try to be the best at it.
And, and it's having that attitude where it helps quite a bit. Now, I always like to start talking with guys towards the interview where we start getting off more the typical kind of questions. And, do you follow other kinds of drag racing besides the NHRA kind of stuff? Do you follow no prep heads up racing? Do you check out anything else?
I've got a couple of buddies that race in the no prep stuff. To be honest with you, I've kind of lost touch with it, but not really.
See, it's interesting to see some guys, they are watch anything and anything racing related. I'm one of those types. And if there's a race going on somewhere local within a so many hours drive that's worth going to, I'm packing up and going to check it out. Heads up racing, any kinds of cool stuff like that. Again, it's probably because I hate my time and money, but it makes it fun.
Yeah, I wish I could, but Bernie's is the real deal. Contrary to popular belief, I do still turn wrenches and show up 90 hours a week to be able to build the Top Fuel team. So like you said before, there's three places that I'm at.
And again, that probably makes things stay a heck of a lot successful for you as well on all sides of the spectrum.
Absolutely.
Because it's always interesting. I see a lot of other racers too that seems like racers and boats go hand in hand, and it's not like I've never seen a fast drag racer own a pontoon boat. It's usually some god awful 90,000 foot long boat with like 4 supercharged engines. I'm like, do you do anything to relax?
I have a boat and it's a Nitro. And it's a bass boat that I've never fished off of, but it's got a nice, healthy outboard motor, and it's a lot of fun to tool around in.
Nice. That it's interesting to see that because it's you get someone like Eddie Hill who used to he came from Nitro boat racing, which that's another thing I can't wrap my mind around is so being on the water is already inherently dangerous going fast. So let's just strap a Nitro motor behind this thing and just let it rip.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? What's the worst that could happen that you watch these races? It's like, all right, you're definitely on. Those guys, I think, are on the same spectrum as the Nitro Harley racers. Those guys, again, different level of crazy.
Yeah, I give my hat off to Bob Malloy. He's a badass.
Yeah, that I still need to work on getting one of those guys on the show because pretty much every racer I talk to, doesn't matter what they race, is scared of Nitro Harleys. I'm gonna ask a Nitro Harley racer point blank, what are you scared of? Like what that Tyrannosaurus Rex, aliens? I mean, what scares a Harley racer? That would terrify me immensely. But Josh, our time here is coming to an end, and I like to give my guests their chance to turn it over to them, and they can be like John Force and thank all their sponsors and where everybody's at. So, where they can find you out, where they can learn more, what they got going on. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you so you can thank your sponsors and who you need to thank.
I appreciate you. Just thank you to TechNet. They've been with me for 5 years. Very grateful for them. Advance Auto Parts. Obviously, my Bernie Speed Shop family. My wife, my daughter, my adopted dad who picked on me about my reaction time prior to the Gator Nationals. Thank you. It was the motivation I needed. Just a really good group of guys with the whole Fearless Racing team. Ron Douglas, they're awesome. They're awesome. All the fans, couldn't do it without you. And see you in Atlanta.
Well, Josh, I got to thank our sponsors, of course, AFR, Performance Distributors, and Pro Chargers, being on board with us. Awesome talking with you. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you again. Are you going to Norwalk?
Yes, sir.
I will see you at Norwalk because I'm going to be there for a couple days, so I will stop by and say hello. And once again, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to it.